Hi guys, welcome to Snake Nook. I'm Vanny and with me I have little Sandstorm. She's somewhere in here in my hair somewhere. She's going to be helping me out with the intro of this video and the first portion of it. And the topic of this video is snakes, the most villainized animals on the planet. This is the second video in a 3-video series that I'm making about snakes and how they are perceived in our world. The first one that I made was titled Snakes, the Most Misunderstood Animals in Our Planet. And then I have this second video, and then I'm gonna have a third upcoming one titled Snakes, the Most Persecuted Animals in Our Planet. So let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna talk about why snakes are the most villainized animals on our planet. Stay tuned. I have some notes with me that I'm going to be referring to as I go through the things that I'm going to talk about. Have you ever wondered why snakes can be considered to be the most villainized animal on the planet? Well, consider this. There are many movies and myths that depict snakes as sinister beings. Let's talk about some snake characters in some movies, stories, or myths. I can think of Kaa from the Jungle Book. Kaa is an Indian rock python, and Kaa can hypnotize. Kaa is also a secondary antagonist in the story, not one of the good guys. There's Medusa in Greek mythology. Her head is covered by venomous viper-like snakes. So not a good character. That character can turn people to stone if they look directly into her eyes. A villain. Did you ever watch Rango? In Rango, there is a villain, Jake the Rattlesnake. And Jake the Rattlesnake is the #1 evil villain in this movie. And then we have also Slytherin Basilisk from Harry Potter. That is a colossal snake. There is Jafar from Aladdin that turns into a cobra. And there's also a story called Rikki Tavi about a mongoose that saves his family from 2 black cobras, Nog and Nagaina. After Nog, the male cobra, dies, his wife, Nagaina, the female black cobra, decides to take vengeance. And so she goes after Rikki, and there has to be a battle between Rikki and Nagaina. And of course, the villains in this story are the cobras, the black cobras. Did you ever watch the movie Anaconda, the 1997 horror thriller movie? In that movie, the anaconda is very large. It is colossal, larger than maybe even Titanoboa would have been. And this huge boa moves ridiculously fast and in ways that a boa of that size and weight just would not move. And the way that the snake behaves, the way that, the movements of the snake actually make the snake look incredibly menacing. So what do all of these movies do for our mindset? So if you're a child watching movies like The Jungle Book, reading stories like Rikki Tavi, reading Greek mythology, and you read about Medusa, and you watch movies where a villain turns into a snake, well, what do you think is going to be the mindset that you're going to have regarding snakes? So snakes are terribly villainized in movies, stories, and myths. Joining us next is Autumn. She is my albino pinstripe, and she is going into shed, so she's only going to be out for a little while. Also, guys, I wanted to talk about some books. In the Bible book of Genesis, in chapter 3, the snake is described as the most cautious of all the wild beasts. And this gives us some insight as to why the devil chose a serpent to deceive Eve in the Garden of Eden. And we know the outcome of the disobedience on the part of Adam and Eve. So we now have sin and death. And it was a serpent that came to Eve to tell her that she could be like God, knowing good and bad. And when Eve did what the serpent told her to do, then there were consequences that were to follow. But think about it, guys. In the Bible book of Genesis, chapter 3, the Bible describes the snake, the serpent, as the most cautious of all the wild animals. Now, what about books that children can read at their school library? Look at this one. Look at this title, Scary Snakes. Although this book contains many facts about snakes, the title, I feel, does not appropriately go with the book. What is the mindset that a child will have after reading such a book? Let me show you a few of the pages. This book is titled Scary Snakes, and it is part of an I Love Reading series. And just to show you some of the things that are here. So they show, so in this book, children can read about snake babies. Let's see what else. They can read about the king cobra and how long it measures. And they can read about the ball python. Now this book is from 2006, so it's been a while. And we now have a little bit of a different perspective on the ball python. It is seen as a pet snake. The book goes ahead and tells, it says there that snakes will burrow and lay eggs in the burrow. They also talk about, they also talk about rattlesnakes. A lot of facts about these animals. The emerald tree boa in quite an impressive pose there with fangs out. But this book is part of a series, guys, that has other titles. And let me read some of the other titles in the series. A Day with an Airplane Pilot, A Day with Animal Doctors, Dinosaurs That Ate Meat, Dinosaurs That Ate Plants, My Cat is a Mommy, My Dog's a Mommy, Orangutan Baby. None of those titles include the word scary, except for the book that is about snakes. Not Scary Dinosaurs That Ate Meat and Scary Dinosaurs That Ate Plants, but Scary Snakes. So, what would you have titled this book? I wouldn't have titled it Scary Snakes. So if you have an idea for a better title for this book, please drop it in the comments. So for them. Okay, think about this. The snake is a silent animal. Well, snakes can hiss, yes, but that's really the only sound that they will make. It's like a hiss. And that's not a cute sound. That's not a sound that causes us to want to take care of it or to want to see what is wrong with it. If it's hissing, we associate that with danger. We associate that as a warning. Associate that with a warning from the snake because, well, that is what it is. But if a snake is in distress, hurt, or scared, we don't really sympathize with it because snakes are expressionless, really. Their faces are rather expressionless and their eyes don't look, they're not full of expression either. So think about it. If a little mammal, like a little rodent or something, is hurt or in distress or scared, they may squeal, shriek, or let out a little sound that perhaps will cause us humans to feel like we can sympathize with its pain, with its fear, and then we may leave it alone. We're not going to mess with it. And maybe the eyes get large and dark and when the animal is scared, and so we can certainly sympathize with that. But snakes, on the other hand, because they are silent and they don't let out a scream if they're scared, people think that they are afraid of nothing and they should fear them. So snakes are, once again, the villain, just because they are silent. What does that say? And guys, just because snakes don't scream out in pain does not mean that they cannot feel pain. It's very possible that she may have more pain receptors in an inch of her skin than I do in an inch of mine. And so yes, snakes feel pain for sure. They do. Their anatomy has included pain receptors, and so they do feel pain quite exquisitely. And when they are injured or hurt in a large way, they suffer tremendously, just like mammals do, and even more so. But yet they are villainized. And this is Tsunami. Tsunami's going to help me with the segment about the Burmese python in the Everglades, and we're going to talk about why they are considered to be villains. Tsunami, let's talk about the Burmese python, shall we? Well, guys, if you have been keeping up with snake videos, I'm sure by now you have seen something about the Burmese python in the Everglades and why that is such a concern in Florida. So right now, the Florida Everglades has an incredible number of Burmese python inhabiting the Everglades National Park, and it is a great concern for Floridians. So part of the effort of conserving the Everglades National Park includes getting rid of the invasive species of snakes that are currently there, mostly the Burmese python. And there are other animals that are invasive that are living in the Everglades. There are some monkeys that are invasive. The cane toad is invasive and it's living there, as well as the green iguana. But you won't hear as much about those guys as you will about the Burmese python. And even some of these large constrictors have made it there as well into the Everglades, and they are surviving because the climate is just right, the environment is just right. The environment, the ecosystem in the Everglades supports animals like boas and pythons, and they're able to thrive, not just survive. And unfortunately, guys, when you think about an invasive species in the Everglades, the first animal that may come to mind is the Burmese python. So they are villainized because they are invasive and they are challenging the apex predator in that ecosystem, which is the American alligator, and they are winning. But it is not their fault that they are there. No Burmese python in its natural habitat ever had the idea to move to the Everglades National Park and colonize it. That was not their idea. However, over 100 years ago, well over 100 years ago, people were colonizing that area. And it is humans that decided to drain the Everglades. At that time, we weren't concerned with conserving it, were we? Even though the Everglades is one of a kind, they were not concerned with conservation at that time. So what people were doing was that they were draining the Everglades because they needed to make the land suitable for agriculture and urban development. So they built these canals that would channel the water out into the ocean. That way they could use the land for building on it and for doing other things, for making it suitable for their purposes. And so the damage to the Everglades did not begin with the Burmese python, but the way you read things these days on even some videos that I came across on YouTube, and I've come across some of these, over time, I've seen some titles like this: Python found pregnant with 60 eggs in the Florida Everglades. I would say that's a rather sensational title. So what that does is people that don't know much about snakes may think that all of those 60 eggs are going to hatch perfectly fine, and all of those babies are going to grow up and they're going to be menacing other animals in the Everglades and eating them all up. That's going to be what people think, people that don't know too much about snakes. when in reality, a lot of those snakes won't make it to adulthood. But that's one title I've come across, and that, you know, just makes Burmese look like villains. Another one, another title, Bitten by a Giant Snake in the Everglades. So that's going to incite some fear in people. Giant pythons have overrun Florida. That's another title. All of them negative, all of them villainizing the Burmese python. And it's not its fault that it's there. They are not at fault. They were brought into the United States through the pet trade. They were kept by people that could not manage their large sizes when they grew up. Natural disasters like hurricanes that may have contributed to the destruction of buildings and homes that then released, that caused the release of animals into the Everglades, not just the pythons, but other types of animals. But it is the Burmese python that is at the very front of this mess, taking the hit for everything that's wrong in the Everglades these days. Another point that I wanted to make when discussing the Burmese python in the Everglades too, there is a great concern about the disappearance of the raccoon in the Everglades National Park. But even though it is believed that it's because of the Burmese python that they're all gone, well, yes, certainly the Burmese have been eating some of those raccoon, but they weren't the ones that started the decline of the population of the raccoon. So it was actually the U.S. Fish and Wildlife that runs the Everglades National Park that exterminated raccoons. This is decades ago, guys. They were getting rid of them in large numbers. And so that was the initial decline. And certainly the Burmese coming into existence in the Everglades National Park and, you know, preying upon some of the raccoon population that was left, well, that didn't help. But nowadays, when you read information about the raccoon population decline, pretty much the villain is the Burmese python. I hope this helps you to understand why snakes have been villainized, and they are perhaps the most villainized animal on the planet. All kinds of snakes, not just venomous snakes are villains, but all kinds of snakes. A lot of misinformation out there, and because snakes are largely misunderstood overall, over the years, over the centuries, they have become man's greatest villain. Man, it seems, has been at war with snakes since the beginning of time. Snakes will never win against man. I'm going to leave you with a parting thought. As people continue to increase in population and people continue to build homes in rural areas, where are the snakes supposed to go? If you see a snake in your backyard, does that give you the right to kill it because it's venomous? Well, where are they supposed to go, guys? They are a part of our world, but we keep pushing them to the edge. And they have no option sometimes but to fight back. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Thank you so much for staying with us to the end of the video. Y'all have a good one. Bye.